Oleg, well, you soon. Liza came into the office. Boris, we decided to have lunch at the cafe today. Are you coming with us? You go, I'll still work, said Boris, barely holding back a groan. Oh, you look pale. Are you sick? Lisa walked over to his desk. Damn, why are you bothering? Go on, he thought, gritting his teeth from another attack of pain, and involuntarily pressing his palm to the left side of his chest. Heart, there's sweat on your forehead. Boris, should we call an ambulance? Liza looked back helplessly at Oleg. Do not yell, stunned Boris thinks to himself, but a loud exhaled. Don't need an ambulance. It'll pass now. Hey, you really don't look so good. Look, you go home, and we'll cover for you if you need us. Can you drive yourself? Can I give you a ride? Oleg asked. Thanks, you're a real friend. Boris looked gratefully at Oleg, turned his gaze to the upset Lisa. Guys, go to the cafe. I feel better already. Really? Boris made an effort, took his hand away, and even smiled. All right, and you go home, don't be a hero. Oleg took his jacket from the closet, looked back at Boris one last time, and he and Lisa left the office. Boris rubbed his chest with the palm of his hand, trying to soothe the pain, and it let go, allowed him to take a deep breath. Boris wiped the sweat from his forehead. He sat still, listening to himself. The heart-piercing pain was replaced by aching and dullness. It felt better. Boris turned off the computer, carefully got up from the desk, put on his jacket and left the office. It was quite natural to walk down the corridor at lunchtime. The dull ache in his heart didn't let go, but it didn't get any worse. Nothing. I'll rest, it'll pass. It's the coffee. It's time to stop drinking liters of it, Boris reasoned, sitting in the car on the way home. They had studied together at the institute, though in different groups, and the three of them had been lucky enough to work in the same office, but in different departments. Boris knew that Lisa liked him, and Oleg liked Lisa. It was like that. Oleg did not show Liza his sympathy. As a true friend, he kept out of the way until the time, ceding the right of primacy to the more sympathetic Boris. But one day the unexpected happened. Boris fell in love. One day he was walking down the street from the institute and saw a red-haired girl walking towards him. Their gazes met, and Boris realized that he couldn't go on living if he walked past her now. Usually reserved, he approached her and got to know her. Love came upon him in a 9-point storm, making him forget everything in the world. Boris had his own apartment, almost the only one in the whole course. He had gotten it from his mother's sister, who had been ill for a long time and died. She had neither husband nor children. In this apartment he and Lara indulged in sin, often missing not only lectures, but also classes. In a fit of passion, Boris confessed his love to Lara, a proposal to live a long, happy life, to have children and die in one day. Because without Lara, he sees no meaning of life. Just like that, before he knew it, he became a married man. After the wedding quickly came the epiphany and disappointment. Lara suddenly became restrained, refused intimacy, citing headache and fatigue, which quickly passed when Boris gave her gifts. At first he did without flowers and dinner in a cafe. Then the gifts became more and more important and expensive. And where did a final year student get the money from? Of course, parents gave a little. But Lara's appetite grew. Boris had to get a job. After classes he ran to work, came home tired to exhaustion and hungry. When he got home, he went to bed. Lara was angry. In general, the hasty marriage was cracking at the seams. Lara was already a bad cook, and now she stopped cooking altogether. By the way, she even managed to ruin fried potatoes. You come in and go straight to bed. What do I have to work at the stove for? I don't see you at all, she pouted resentfully. I'm working hard for you. You wanted a fur coat, didn't you? Boris justified himself. Why do I need a fur coat if I have nowhere to go? When was the last time we went out together? Lara was getting agitated. In the end, Boris got tired of it all. Passion was replaced by dissatisfaction, fatigue, and misunderstanding. He often wondered where love went. How did he manage to get so stuck? And at the same time, Oleg comforted suffering from unrequited love Lisa. Therefore, when the heart attack at work, Boris was not afraid, even thought that to die would be the best thing to solve all the problems at once. The elevator car finally descended to the first floor. Boris got in and pressed his back against the wall. The doors closed. The elevator car shuddered and crawled upward. Boris got off at the 6th floor, opened the door, and tumbled out into the apartment. Hanging his jacket on the hook, he saw his wife's coat on the coat rack, and next to it, someone else's leather jacket. I was surprised that Lara wasn't at work. She hadn't warned him about anything like that this morning, and she looked quite healthy. Boris listened. There was no sound coming from the closed door to the room. He stood holding the cool metal handle, then opened the door abruptly. On the disassembled couch, two naked bodies were intertwined among the crumpled sheets. His wife's red hair, strewn across the cushion, burned brightly. The pain in his heart returned at once from what he'd seen. So much so that Boris couldn't take a breath. His eyes darkened, and he pressed his shoulder against the door jamb. Before he blacked out, he saw his wife's eyes widen with horror. Darkness was replaced by light. Boris stepped into the light and found himself on the road. Before him stretched a vast field of wheat, among which bright blue cornflowers flashed. At the horizon, the field merged with the blue sky without a single cloud. Boris knew this field, this place. If he looked to the left, he could see the roofs of the houses of the village, where he spent his grandmother's school vacations every summer. Boris turned his head, but saw no houses. Instead of the village, the same wheat field stretched into the distance. He looked back. That's right. On the other side of the road there was a wall of forest. The bus only reached the neighboring village, as there was a dirt road leading to his grandmother's village. In the rains it was washed away, and no one could drive on it except a tractor. Boris looked under his feet. He was barefoot, but he could not feel the bumps and small stones. The light was pleasant, warm, but there was no sun in the sky, nor was there any wind. No birds could be heard, no cicadas chirping. The air stood still, making everything seem drawn, not alive. Then the light disappeared. When it reappeared, Boris found himself in the same place. On the road, a wheat field growing in front of him. He walked along it, not to stand forever in one place. A bridge over a ravine appeared ahead. Boris remembered it. At the bottom of the ravine ran a small stream. When it rained, the ravine filled with water, and the stream turned into a river, which often flooded the bridge. Boris did not understand what was happening, how he had ended up here. There was no one to ask. There was no further to go. I tried. A pleasant girl's voice sounded nearby. Boris stopped and saw the girl. She was sitting on the edge of the bridge with her legs overhanging. Her wheat-colored hair was scattered over her shoulders. Her blue eyes seemed like lakes on her fair skin. He had never seen such beautiful girls. Even Lara was a long way from her. Boris could have sworn that a second before, no girl had been here. Where had she come from? He walked over and sat down next to her. Suddenly he was afraid that the light might suddenly go out again, that he wouldn't see the girl again. Panic seized him. Boris tried to take a breath and couldn't. He knew he had to breathe, but the more he tried to breathe, the more the pain in his chest became stronger, more intolerable. "Doctor, he's awake, hurry," came a familiar voice, and the pain in his chest stopped abruptly. Boris opened his eyes and immediately closed them again, blinded by the bright light. It didn't hurt to breathe, but it was hard, as if his chest were being squeezed. He opened his eyes again. "Boris, you scared me so much." Lara leaned over him. "What's wrong with me?" Boris asked, making an effort. The words scraped down his throat with glass. "You don't remember?" Lara asked. "I found you on the floor in your room when I came home from work. I called an ambulance. You were in a coma for 3 days. I'm so glad you're back." Boris felt his wife squeeze his hand. "That's it. He needs rest. He's still too weak." Another woman's head in a white cap appeared next to Lara's head. "Come back tomorrow. Don't be afraid, everything will be all right now." Lara and the doctor disappeared. Boris closed his eyes, hoping that he would find himself again on the bridge over the ravine near the wheat field, next to the blue-eyed girl. But he just fell asleep, without dreams. And when he woke up, he felt much better. Lara came every day. She thought he didn't remember anything, but he remembered. He just didn't have the energy to discuss it yet. After sleeping during the day, he pondered his life at night. Mom had been right when she said Boris had rushed into marriage. He's in the hospital and his wife is at home alone or with someone else, in their bed. Thinking about it was unbearable. The doctor said he shouldn't worry. His heart was no joke, and Boris began to think that not for nothing life gives him a second chance. He needed to put things right and start with a clean slate. Returning from the hospital, Boris involuntarily looked at the coat rack. There was no other man's leather jacket on the hook, but it was. You can't forget that. In the refrigerator was a pot of broth that Lara had brought him to the hospital. He would like a piece of meat or cutlets now, but there was neither in the fridge, and he was sick of broth in the hospital, too. He closed the fridge and warmed the kettle. After discharge, Boris stayed at home for 2 more weeks. He slept, went for walks. One night Lara pressed against him, said that she missed him. Boris replied that the doctor had advised him to avoid any exertion for the first time. Lara sighed and moved away. She didn't pester him again. That suited Boris. In the morning he said that he remembered everything, that he could not forget and live with her as before. "I think we should break up. Lara tried to justify herself, crying. But then she packed her things and left, probably to his place. Boris sighed more freely, as if he had gotten rid of a heavy burden. He went to work and found out that Lisa and Oleg had applied for a registry office. You recovered in time. In a month and a half we have a wedding. Oleg shared his joy. Prepare a gift with Lara. Back in the hospital, doctor explained to Boris that when people are in a coma, they seem to get into another world, even meet there with those who are in the same state. But when they wake up, they forget everything. The probability of meeting them in life is 0. But Boris did not forget the girl. Walking down the street, involuntarily looked at women's faces. The new year and the wedding of friends was approaching. On his day off, Boris went shopping in search of a wedding present. There was less and less time left. Passing by a jewelry store, he gave in to some incomprehensible impulse and went inside. He walked slowly past the glass showcases, looking at the rings and earrings glittering on the red velvet. Are you looking for something in particular? The saleswoman asked. Boris looked up at her and froze. It was the girl from the coma. Wheat-colored hair, blue eyes, it was her. His heart froze for a moment, and it seemed to Boris that the pain was returning. He even leaned his hands on the counter to keep from falling. But his heart beat without pain, only faster. Shall I show you something? Who are you picking out a gift for? Wife or girlfriend? She looked at him questioningly, and he was confused and silent. And what would you recommend for a beautiful girl? Boris finally found one. It's a matter of taste. I like this ring. She pulled out from under the glass of the showcase a thin ring with a bluish stone. Look, the girl began to explain why she preferred this particular ring, and Boris kept his eyes on her fingers. The pink nails were perfectly shaped, his own. Boris realized it at once, and he liked it too. What size is your girlfriend? I don't know, Boris said hoarsely and coughed. Try it on, I'll see. The girl put the ring on, took her hand away, and showed it to Boris. It's a beautiful gift. Your girlfriend will love it. Or should I show her something else? She asked. No, that's all right. I'll take this, Boris answered hastily. While he was paying for the purchase at the cash register, the girl packed the velvet box with the ring in a gift bag. He gave her the check, held the bag, reading the name on the name tag. This is for you, Yulia. You liked it. But I don't have a girlfriend. Yulia immediately grew serious. I can't take it. You can't do that. There are cameras everywhere. I paid for it, not stole it. Take it, please, Boris said, and hurried to the door before Yulia came to her senses. The next day he came to the store towards the end of his work. Yulia was showing the couple wedding rings. She noticed Boris at once, but continued to deal with the customers. Another girl hurried toward him, but Boris stopped her with a gesture of his hand. 20 minutes stretched into eternity for Boris. Finally, the couple chose rings, paid, and left. Boris walked up to Yulia and put a bouquet of roses on the counter. Thank you, of course. But I don't understand, Yulia blurted out. You recognized me right away, too? No. I don't know you, Yulia said uncertainly. I'm Boris. I was looking for you. I came into the store by chance and recognized you at once. I'll wait for you outside. It was cold. Boris was beginning to lose patience when Yulia walked out of the door of the jewelry store. The guard locked the door behind her, hung up the sign closed, and looked at Boris carefully through the glass. He smiled at the guard. They walked slowly to Yulia's house and talked. Boris told her about the coma, about their meeting on the bridge. When was it? The date? Yulia asked excitedly and even stopped. The attack happened on September 12th. The doctor said that I was in a coma for 3 days. But I saw you not immediately, on the 2nd or 3rd day. You told me then that you couldn't go further than the bridge, that you tried. I sat down next to you, and then you disappeared? Don't you remember? How could you be with me, in my dream? I was hit by a car on the 13th, and the doctor said my heart stopped during surgery. I was in a coma for hours. I don't remember anything. But your face looked really familiar. But I can't remember where I've seen you. Were you ever in Vashenki, where you were hit by a car? Boris was trying to find out. I've never heard that name. I was crossing the road at the corner of Tverskoy and Darwin, right? Boris continued for her. I live there in the corner 9-story building. Yulia looked at Boris incredulously. We were in a coma at the same time. I think that's why. I don't think it was an accident. You were hit by a car, and I caught my wife with a lover. I had a heart attack. I'm even grateful to my wife for that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have met you. Are you married? Yulia asked in a low voice. Not anymore. I got divorced 2 weeks ago. 6 months later, Yulia and Boris got married. A year later, they had a daughter, Eva. Why Eva? Yulia asked. smiling at her husband and holding the tiny baby to her chest. Because you were the only woman there, between heaven and earth. But you have a name. Let Eva be our daughter in memory of the place where we met. One day Boris ran into Lara in the street. Hi, I knew we'd meet sooner or later. How are you, alone? She asked, clearly pleased by their meeting. Boris looked at his ex-wife and wondered where his eyes had been before. Nothing special about her, and her hair is not red at all. But died. I got married. I have a daughter. And you? I'm alone. Lara just kind of went blank. I lost you, and he didn't need me. She walked away with her shoulders slumped. Boris felt sorry for her, but he had no regrets. Eva and Yulia were waiting for him in their home, in their family paradise.